it mean to be free? Is it the ability to make choices? To pursue our goals and aspirations? Or to live life on our own terms? Well, in this video presentation, we are going to explore the concept of freedom, its different forms, and what it means to individuals and society. Hi, and welcome to Group 2's video presentation. I'm Aizal Sandigan Itgin, your first reporter. And today, we are going to tackle the very important and timely topic, which is the concept of freedom. So, what do you think is freedom? Well, freedom is the power to make choices and live life as we want without unnecessary restrictions. For better understanding what freedom is, let's consider a political example. We all know that during elections is the selection of our leaders, and our right to vote for our leaders is the best example for freedom. Now that you already know what is freedom, let me introduce to you the different forms of freedom. Freedom is classified into two categories: the negative freedom and the positive freedom. Let's begin with the negative freedom. Negative freedom refers to the absence of external constraints or interference, where individuals are free to pursue their own goals without any restrictions. For example, you are free to pursue your own career path without any government interference, and that gives you an autonomy to make choices that only affects your life and also not harming others. While, on the other hand, we also have the positive freedom. This freedom refers to the capacity of individual to fulfill their potential and achieve self-realization. For instance, a young artist gets free art classes, allowing them to develop their talents and pursue their dreams, and that enables them to grow and be the best version of themselves. That's a wrap for me. Always remember that freedom is a complex and multifaceted concept, and I hope that I've been able to shed some light to its forms. Now, let's hear the insights of the next reporters who will dive deeper about the concept of freedom.
Hello, I am Marvin J. O. Song, and this is the continuation of the first reporter. So, my topic is all about freedom and political philosophy. So, freedom has been central of political philosophy, influencing idea about the role of the state and individual rights. Philosophers have offered varying interpretations of freedom based on the relationship between the individuals and the state. So, another side, freedom is important in politics. It affects how we view and government and our rights. Different people have different ideas about what freedom means. So, there are two differences of philosophy. First is liberalism. So, liberalism advocates for individual freedoms, emphasizing rights such as freedom of speech and protections from government interference. So, let's make it simple. Liberalism champions individuals' freedom, especially free speech and protection from government interference. So I have an example here. A government wants to stop people from criticizing it. Liberals will say that's wrong because people have the right to free speech. So the second one is republicanism. Republicanism focuses on the idea of freedom as non-domination, where individuals are free from arbitrary control by others, including the state. So, another side, republicanism sees freedom as being free from anyone's control, including the government. So,
hi, I'm Justin Bala, and I will going to tackle the theories of justice and freedom. The relationship between justice and freedom is crucial to the political theories. Number one is the general theory of justice. He proposed framework for balancing freedom with fairness. He suggests that social and economic inequality should only exist if that they will benefit the less advantage of the society. So, This view seeks to harmonize freedom with demands of justice, ensuring that all individuals have the resources and opportunity to live freely. So the first example is the PORPIS, or Pantawid Pamilya Pilipino program. So how it is connected to John Rawls' theory. So, according to Rawls' theory that social and economic inequality should only exist if they benefit the less advantage of the society, ensuring that they have the access to the basic necessities, like for example the education and health. So it is aligning with Rawls' principles that inequality should help the most disadvantaged in the society. The program aims to improve their opportunities and give them the fair chance at improving the quality of life. So now let's proceed to the Immanuel Kant's theory of justice. Kant's theory of justice focuses on the moral laws or laws of freedom. The place limits of people external action limits that can be coercively enforced. Kant's theory, justice and freedom. Now the first is justice. Kant believed that justice should be based on moral principles, not personal interest or desire. And the second one is the freedom. Kant argues that individuals should be free to make choices as long as those choices don't harm others. So, just like for example, the speed limit. Kant would say that speeding is unjust because it can cause harm to others. And the freedom, however, Kant also say that you have the freedom to choose your own speed as long as you can harm others. In this case, the moral principles of justice, not harming others, limits your freedom to speed. So, the main point is that Immanuel Kant's theory of justice is every individual have the freedom, but it is only limited.
Hi, I am Crystal Jean D. Paduga, and this is the continuation of the previous reporter, and I'm going to talk about the other relevance from theories of justice and freedom. Let's first have the libertarianism. This perspective emphasizes individual freedom and minimal government intervention, with a strong focus on property rights and individual autonomy. So, from the word individual freedom and minimal government, libertarians believe that people should be free to make their own choices and decisions as long as they don't harm others. People should be free to live their lives as they choose, and government should not interfere with people's lives or business as long as they know their personal responsibility and they are responsible enough for their own actions and decisions. So, example for this is the LGBTQ. The LGBTQ community has long been a symbol of the struggle for individual freedom and autonomy, as they believe that individuals should be free to make their own choices and decisions as long as they don't harm others. This principle is particularly relevant to the LGBTQ community, who have long been denied the freedom to live their lives authentically. Libertarianism supports LGBTQ in a way that they believe all individuals should be treated equally under the law, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. This means that LGBTQ individuals should have the same rights and protections, including the right to marry, adopt children, and receive equal benefits and protections as heterosexual individuals. As a philosophy, libertarianism has been a powerful force in advocating for LGBTQ rights and will continue to be an important voice in the fight for equality and justice. So, sa madaling salita, ang libertarianism is the freedom of an individual to make their own decisions as long as they don't harm others. And that's all for libertarianism, and let's proceed to utilitarianism. Utilitarianism, this theory seeks to maximize overall happiness and well-being, often leading to policies that prioritize the greatest good for the greatest number, potentially at the expense of individual liberties in some cases. So, from the word maximize overall happiness, utilitarianism is a moral philosophy that says actions are right if they promote the greatest number of people. So I have an example scenario here. You are a doctor and you have two patients. First is a 30-year-old woman and a mother of two children, and the other is a 70-year-old retired doctor. They both need an organ transplant. In your hospital, you only have one organ available for transplant. For you as a doctor, it is hard to choose where to give the organ. But the utilitarian would argue that the organ should be given to patient to a 30-year-old woman and a mother of two children because they believe that this decision would maximize overall happiness and well-being because the patient one has a young children who depend on her and her death would cause significant harm to them. And also more likely to live a longer and healthier life after the transplant, which would increase overall happiness towards her children and to her family. So, in contrast, giving the organ to the second patient, whom are the 70-year-old retired doctor, would not maximize overall happiness and well-being because the second patient is older and may not live as long after the transplant, which would reduce overall happiness. So, if the patient 2 died, it would likely less impact on others as he is retired and does not have dependents, unlike the patient 1 who has a family and children waiting for her return home. So, in this example illustrates the utilitarian principle of maximizing overall happiness and well-being. The decision to give the organ to patient 1 is based on the calculation that it would bring the greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. This approach prioritizes the well-being of the majority over individual interests. So in this example, the utilitarian approach leads to a decision that is in line with our intuitive moral values, which prioritize the well-being of vulnerable individuals like young children. But however, utilitarianism can also lead to more controversial conclusions such as sacrificing one person for the greater good. So, if the libertarianism is all about the freedom of an individual to choose their own decision as long as they don't harm others, the utilitarianism on the other hand is do what makes most of people happy.
Hi, I'm Irami Titombo. So today I'm going to discuss to you what are the philosophical views about freedom. So we have 3 philosophers. First, we have Immanuel Kant. Second, Jean-Paul Sartre. Third, John Locke. So let's start with Immanuel Kant. So Immanuel Kant argued that freedom is a fundamental aspect of morality and that moral actions are those are the chosen freely, rather than being determined by external force. So he argued that the moral actions can be truly moral if it is done freely, based on rational will and guided by the moral principles, and rather than being compiled with external factors like fears and desire for personal growth. And also, he believed that the freedom means the capacity to act according to human rational wills, rather than being controlled with emotions, instinct, and external factors. And also, he believed that human has the ability to recognize or to know the universal laws. So this law he calls the categorical imperative. So, and that this law should be guided our actions. So the categorical imperative is that it requires that we act according to we act in a ways that we can apply to universally, as we chose were the categorical laws establishing for everyone. So second philosopher is Jean-Paul Sartre. So he emphasized the concept of freedom as a burden. His idea about freedom as a burden, he believes that we all have the freedom to choose or to decide whatever we want, but this freedom comes to immense with responsibility. So this freedom can feel like a burden because it places a weight on our shoulders. So we cannot blame external factors like fate or someone to our decision if we make bad decisions. So we are fully responsible of what we decide or what the actions will take place. Third philosopher is John Locke. So John Locke defined freedom as the power to think or not to think, to move or not to move. So he emphasized the ability of individuals to exercise power anatomy in their mind and actions. So by saying freedom is the power to think, not to think, to move, not to move. So definitely it connects to our mind and to our actions. So now let's proceed to freedom and human rights. This foundational principle that empower individuals to lead dignified, meaningful lives. This represents ideals of fairness, justice, and equality. So freedom, it talks about personal. So we have the freedom of speech, we have freedom of movements or religion. So freedom. So on the other hand, human rights, it includes the rights of life, education, and work.
Hello, my name is Nante Nilatore, and my topic is all about freedom of expression. So, freedom of expression is one of the most significant aspects of individual's liberty. It includes the rights of express one's true opinions and ideas freely without censorship of limitations. However, this freedom is not absolute. It must be balanced with consideration of public order, national security, and respect for the rights of others. So, restriction on free speech such as laws against hate speech or incitement of values are sometimes necessary to protect greater goods. So there are two types of freedom. Which is freedom of assembly and freedom of association. So freedom of assembly and association, the right to gather peacefully and associate freely with others is essentially for a functioning democracy. First, freedom of assembly, which is ensure the individuals can come together for social, political, or religious purpose. So, example of that is, like, nagpatawag ang inyong kapitan ng assembly meeting and need kayong pumunta kasi marami daw kayong pag-uusapang importante ukol sa kaayusan ng inyong barangay. That is the freedom of assembly. And next is freedom of association. And freedom of association allow people to join groups, unions, or organizations that align with their values. There is freedom enable collective. So, yun. Like, katulad ng sinabi ko kanina is, pinatawag kayo and need kayong pumunta kasi marami daw kayong pag-uusapan ukol sa inyong barangay kung paano resolbahin ang mga problema sa inyong barangay at kung ano ang may tutulong para mapaunlad pa ang inyong barangay. And that is freedom of expression and freedom of assembly and association.
Hello, my name is Dimple A. Libradilla, and I'm going to talk about the concept of freedom in the Philippines. So the concept of freedom in the Philippines is deeply rooted by the country's history, cultures, and values. So, including for this topic, we have some key aspects, including the freedom from colonial rule, democracy and self-governance, human rights and dignity, cultural expression and identity, and economic freedom and opportunities. Okay, for the freedom from colonial rule, it all started way back from the 1896 Philippine Revolution. So, this was a revolt against the Spanish rule led by the Katipunan under by Andres Bonifacio. Okay, the Filipinos rebelled due to oppression of high taxes and forced labor. Emilio Aguinaldo later on took this leadership. And after the internal conflicts, the revolution temporarily ended with the Pact of Biak na Bato in 1897, exiling Aguinaldo. Okay, for the Declaration of Independence, finally, with the Spanish-American War, Aguinaldo returned and declared the Philippine independence on June 12, 1898 in Kawit, Cavite. Okay, the Philippine flag, this was the time our flag was raised and waved, and our national anthem was firstly played. However, Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States through the Treaty of Paris in the 1898, leading the Philippine-American War in the year 1899 to 1902. Okay, despite the colonization, despite our colonial rulers, they did bring us some good influence, such as the American colonization. They did bring us this education, and for the Spanish colonization, they bring us this Catholic religion. Okay, despite the colonization, again, the revolution and declaration marked the Filipinos' fight for self-rule, shaping our nation's path to full independence. Okay, and that is all for the freedom from colonial rule. Proceeding for the second aspect, the democracy and self-governance. Okay, the democracy and self-governance is Filipino believe in the importance of democratic participation, free elections, and the right to choose their leaders. Okay, as we have known, we in the Philippines is a democratic republic where the power belongs to the people, and citizens exercises this through elections, choosing their leaders, and participating in the governance. Okay, in the 1987 Constitution, it says here that it guarantees the right such as our free of speech, press, freedom, and political participation. However, challenges like corruption, political dynasty, electoral fraud, and weak laws enforcement threaten the true democracy. Okay, despite this, active citizen involvement, transparency, and accountability remain key to our strengthening self-governance and nation's progress. Okay, proceeding for the human rights and dignity, the third aspect. We have here the human rights and dignity in the Philippines. Okay, the human rights and dignity in the Philippines protect our life, liberty, and equality as guaranteed by the 1987 Constitution and our international agreements. So this include our freedom of speech, religion, and due process and protection from abuse. Okay, however, issues like extrajudicial killings, red taggings, media suppression, and discrimination threaten these rights. Okay, but upholding justice, accountability, and social equality is essential for ensuring the dignity and freedom of every Filipinos. Okay, proceeding for the fourth aspect, the cultural expression and identity. Okay, Filipinos celebrate their diverse cultural heritage and the freedom to express themselves through arts, music, and traditions. Okay, here in the Philippines, we have diverse culture which is reflected in our language, tradition, arts, and beliefs, which is shaped by the indigenous roots and foreign influences. We have our freedom of expression, which allows every Filipino to preserve their nations through festival, literature, music, and religious practices. So we have the right to celebrate our tradition in the Philippines. Okay, lastly, for the fifth aspect, economic freedom and opportunity. Economic freedom and opportunity in the Philippines, Filipinos strives for economic mobility and the freedom to pursue their goals and aspiration. As we can see, economic freedom in the Philippines means the right to work, own a business, and access fair opportunities. Okay, the government promotes job creation, entrepreneurship, and investment. But issues like poverty, unemployment, and income inequality remain challenges in the Philippines. So many Filipinos seek better opportunities abroad as overseas Filipino workers, or what we call OFWs. Fair wage labor rights and inclusive growth are essential to ensuring economic stability and financial independence for all. And again, these are the key aspect of concept of freedom in the Philippines. Freedom from colonial rule, rather, democracy and self-governance, human rights and dignity, cultural expression and identity, and economic freedom and opportunity. And that is all for concept of freedom in the Philippines.
Hello everyone, my name is Denver Gabdines, and I am going to discuss to you right now is the historical context and philosophical influences and cultural context. So number one is the Enlightenment ideas. It is the philosophical movement that emphasizes reasons, individual rights, and democracy. And it is also known as the Age of Reasons. That was significant intellectual and cultural movement in Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries. For instance, is the Philippine Revolution in 1896 that was led by Emilio Aguinaldo and was inspired by the Enlightenment thinkers that was John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And the second one is the liberalism and nationalism. So it is the philosophical ideology that advocates for individual freedom, national sovereignty, and self-determination. These two are distinct but often interconnected in political ideologies. For instance, is the writings of Jose Rizal, which is the No Limitangere and El Filibusterismo, that was emphasizing individual freedom, national sovereignty, and self-determination. Those are the parts of historical context and philosophical influences. And now, for the cultural context. First one is the existentialism and bayanihan. It is the philosophical concept that emphasizes individual responsibility and freedom with a communal context. So when we talk about bayanihan, it is when Filipinos help each other, no? For instance, during the 2013 Typhoon Haiyan, Filipinos came together and helped each other, and demonstrating the concept of bayanihan. So it is very sabot-abon. So the second one is the phenomenology and pakikipagkapwa. When we say pakikipagkapwa, it is when Filipino shared solidarity with each other. So it is also the philosophical concept that highlights the importance of intersubjective understanding, empathy, and social responsibility. For instance, the Filipino value of pakikipagkapwa or the shared humanity is evident in the country's vibrant festival culture as the Mascara Festival in Bacolod. So, pakikipagkapwa and bayanihan are almost the same, no? It is when Filipinos help each other. So, that's all for the historical context and philosophical influences and cultural context.
Hi everyone, I am Jenny A. Navas. My topic for today is all about social concept. The social concept composed of two types, which is the first one is the social contract theory and democracy, and then the second one is the utilitarianism and economic development. First, let's tackle about the social contract theory and democracy. So when you say social contract theory and democracy, they are both deeply intertwined concepts. Social contract theory dating back to ancient Greece but gaining prominence during the Enlightenment possesses that a legitimate government arises from the concept of the governed. Individuals voluntarily surrendered certain rights and freedoms in exchange for the protection and benefits provided by the state. In this agreement, the social contract is implicit or explicit, forming the basis of political legitimacy. So when we say implicit or explicit, is explicit, everyone knows the rules because it's directly stated. When we say implicit, the rule is understood even without being explicitly stated. So, next is democracy. In its purest form, embodies the principle of the social contract. It's a system where citizens participate in governing themselves directly or indirectly through elected representatives. The example of this is the 96 EDSA People Power Revolution in the Philippines. The idea is that the Filipino people under the oppressive Marcos regime implicitly or explicitly agreed to be governed in the exchange of the protection of the rights and freedoms. However, the Marcos regime violated this contract by suppressing rights and freedoms. The EDSA revolution, a largely peaceful uprising, can be interpreted as the people withdrawing their consent to be governed under those conditions, demonstrating the power of the people to reclaim their governance and enforce the terms of the social contract. The revolution's success, leading to the overthrow of Marcos, is presented as evidence that a government's legitimacy relies on upholding its end of the social contract. Next to that is the utilitarianism and economic development. These two are both distinct concepts, but they can be linked in interesting ways. Utilitarianism is a moral philosophy that says the best action is the one that creates the most happiness for the most people. It's about making choices that lead to the greatest overall well-being. Imagine, you have to choose between building a new school or a new factory. A utilitarian might argue for the school because it would benefit more people in the long run by improving education and creating a more skilled workforce. While economic development is about improving the standard of living in a country or region, it involves things like increasing income, reducing poverty, and improving access to healthcare and education. It's about making life better for everyone. The example of this is the Philippine government's Conditional Cash Transfer or CCT program. Utilitarianism in this context is that the idea that the best action is the one that maximizes overall well-being and happiness for the greatest number of people. The CCT program provides financial assistance to poor families. The text argues that this program reflects utilitarian principles because it aims to improve the well-being of a significant portion of the population or poor families by directly addressing their financial needs. The underlying assumption is that by alleviating poverty, the program increases overall happiness and well-being in society even if it doesn't benefit everyone equally.
Hi, I'm Mario Monte Cantina, and my topic is about the contemporary context. Okay, contemporary context refers to the current time period or societal environment in which something is happening or being discussed. It is about understanding and specific social factor, economic or political factors that are relevant to event, issues, or ideas. So meaning, contemporary context refers to the happening of our society nowadays. One of the best examples here is the social media's impact on society. This is the spread of information and the use of social media in elections. So this is one of the example of contemporary context. And the second one is environmental activism, meaning it is the growing awareness of climate change and environmental degradation has led to widespread activism and policy changes. So these two are one of the examples of contemporary context. So we have here three kinds of contemporary context. Number one is digital ethics and online activism. Number two, we have globalization and cosmopolitanism. And number three, we have sustainability and environmental ethics. So we will define each of them. Okay. So first we have digital ethics and online activism. Okay, the digital ethics it is a branch of philosophy that examines the moral principle and values that are related to interactions and behavior in digital spaces. This includes issues like privacy, data protection, and the decision-making process of artificial intelligence. So this means it is about the technology we are using nowadays. And the second is we have globalization and cosmopolitanism. Cosmopolitanism means this is pandaibigang pananaw, or what we call global perspective. So this means that the interconnectedness or refers to the interconnectedness of people or cultures globally, acknowledging shared humanity and responsibility despite national boundaries. So meaning this is about relying on each other, helping each other despite of our national boundaries. This is the meaning of globalization and cosmopolitanism. And lastly, we have sustainability and environmental ethics. So this is the human action, or what is our action towards the environment. So one of the best example here is the Save Palawan movement. This movement highlights the interconnectedness of environmental protection, social justice, and sustainable development in Palawan, illustrating the power of community-led environmental advocacy in the Philippines. So this improves the protection of our environment, or what are we going to do to protect our nature.
Hi, I am Sheila B. Doliantes, and my topic is all about post-colonialism and decolonization. Post-colonialism and decolonization has two types: breaking free from the past and embracing cultural diversity. Breaking free from the past, the Philippines' historical colonization has had a lasting impact. Filipinos continue to work towards true independence and self-rule. It implies a conscious effort by Filipinos to dismantle the lingering influence of colonialism, such as a dependency of foreign powers, social inequalities, and political instability. Examples: political reform. Political reforms, Filipinos continue to push for reforms that strengthen democratic institutions and reduce corruption, ensuring that political power serves the people rather than elite interest inherited form of colonial system. Next, embracing cultural diversity. The country's complex cultural heritage is a mixed different influence. Filipinos celebrate diversity and work preserve their unique identity. It means acknowledging and respecting the various ethnic, linguistic, and religious communities and make up the Philippines. It involves celebrating differences while promoting unity and inclusivity. It also includes efforts to preserve indigenous cultures, languages, and practices that are at risk of disappearing due to historical marginalization and modernization. Example, promotion of indigenous rights. Government and civil society initiatives work to protect the rights and cultures of indigenous groups like Igorot, Lumad, and Eta, ensuring that their customs, languages, and traditions are preserved and respected. Now, let's proceed to feminism and gender equality. Feminism and gender equality has two types: empowering women and recognizing intersectionality. Empowering women, the women's movement in the Philippines fights for equal rights, opportunities, and respect. Women demand to be treated as equal and have control over their own lives. It means creating an environment where women can thrive without discrimination, have a voice of decision-making, and exercise their rights freely. It involves addressing societal norms and structures that have historically marginalized women, advocating for equal access to education, economic opportunities, and political representation. It also means protecting women from gender-based violence and giving them the tools to define their own paths in life. Examples: political participation. More Filipino women are running for public office and holding leadership position, influencing policy decisions that affect their lives and the nation. And that's all for empowering women. And next, recognizing intersectionality. It means understanding that individuals can face multiple layers of discrimination based their gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, disability, and other identities. It highlights the need to address their overlapping system of inequality holistically rather than isolation. Example: inclusive education. Schools incorporate lessons that explore how different identities intersect, promoting awareness and empathy among students. Programs also highlight the experience of historically marginalized communities such as Lumad, Moro, and other indigenous people.
Hi, I am Saria Dagal. I'm going to discuss types of indigenous people rights and self-determination. First, respecting ancestral lands. Indigenous communities in the Philippines demand recognition and protection of their ancestral domains. They want to govern themselves and pursue their way of life. So, ang respecting ancestral land ay paggalang or pagrespeto sa ibinilin ng inyong sinaunang ninuno at inyong pahalagahan nito. Like for example, kayo ay may lupain na galing pa sa inyong ninuno. Ang dapat nyong gawin ay inyong pahalagahan at huwag nyong ipagpalit sa anumang bagay. Or huwag nyong ipagbebenta bilang pagrespeto sa inyong ninuno. Next to that is preserving cultural heritage. Indigenous people work to preserve their languages, tradition, and cultural practices. They promote cultural diversity and resilience. So, ang preserving cultural heritage, ito ay pagpapanatili sa kanilang wika, tradition, at kulturang nakasanayan. Like for example, ako ay isang Muslim. Kahit gumagamit ako ng iba't ibang wika, hindi ko pa rin makakalimutan ang aking totoong wika. At sinusunod namin pa rin ang mga tradisyon na galing sa aming mga ninuno at hanggang kami ay tatanda.